So, this will be not a weird one, but I'm going to take an opportunity to kind of detail some of the process that I used as a DM for a little a little game that I ran last night that was almost entirely improv. The only real what do you call it? The only real preparation that I did was I found a I found two different random tables. That was pretty much it. Uh, was the extent of my preparation. And I'll talk a little later about kind of the value of random tables that I'm liking more and more. Um, but I'll go into that a bit later. So the premise of this game, I don't know if I made a video talking about it already yet, but I was supposed to run another game, my Site 27 game, and then like one or two players showed up, a few others couldn't make it, so it was just like, all right, we'll just reschedule because it was literally like the end of that mission. So it's like, all right, we'll just reschedule. That's fine. That's good coffee. Um, so ended up just rescheduling, but the one player stuck around, so it was just like, you want to just play? So I just improved a thing, and I started off. I didn't have the random character table at first, but I just like came up with like, all right, let's roll for your class. Okay, you're on a bridge and like just went through this stuff. Okay, you you're a rogue, I guess. All right, what are you doing here? Are you like an assassin? Just like bounce some ideas back and forth. Okay, yeah, that sounds right, and kind of figured out a character as we went. Um, figure out more of these details. And some players are going to be like, they'll gravitate towards that easier or not as easy. Like being able to go, I like this. I'm inspired in this way by this thing because this character that my one player came up with, Victor, he's like this little assassin dude. Um, he leaves coins on people's eyes when he kills them or when he finds them dead or whatever. So, and that was like a nice little improv detail that was fun, and it just becomes part of the character's personality. It's pretty simple, but it's just the fact that it's like these little improv details. But my normal Friday game was effectively canceled because like there was going to be some scheduling issues. So I was just like, all right, let's just not run it. But then I suggested, okay, well, I can just run a continuation of this, and everyone else that can make it can join in, and we can just make these weird, completely improv characters as we go. So ended up only being one other player that was there, but running a game for two players I think is fine actually. Um, I think there's nothing wrong with running a lower player count. It gets a lot more intimate that way. It's definitely in a lot of ways it's easier, and it can be much easier for the players themselves to actually attempt to interact and do things because it's only like you and maybe one or two other players that you have to deal with. It's you don't have to worry about stepping on each other's toes and that kind of stuff. So like that social anxiety that a lot of newer players tend to have kind of goes away. But anyway, so I'm going to go over this session and some of my thought processes. So we started off making the character, and we got like kind of more details out of the way immediately. And I had this random table to go with. I don't have it on my computer for some reason, but it was this random table. It's got like rolling spots for for class, for age, for motivations, for like character archetype, which is stuff like the hero, the like the healer, the everyman, um, the brawler, that kind of stuff. Like just like really generalized outlines of a personality. So we rolled for a few of those, and we ended up with an orc wizard. I let him choose his own subclass. He chose the this weird ass homebrew subclass chronomancer, which I whatever. It's fucked up, but I don't care. So um ended up yeah, an orc wizard, and we figured out okay, he rolled for a motivation, and his motivation he got recovery. Of all the different motivations in that table, that one is like a really generalized statement, like recovery from what? Everything else was like honor and like kind of more adjective related or more like adjective focused. This was just recovery, like from what? So, but still, that got my mind going a little bit. I was like, all right, so you're an orc wizard that lives in this next city over, and the reason he lives in this next city is simply because that's where the first character, Victor, is going. So it's like, all right, gotta marry those two things. All right, and you're recovering from something. What's something that affects a wizard that's going to be pretty bad, besides just a generic disease that's kind of boring? He was under some sort of silencing curse. Who knows why? We'll figure that out later. It's not relevant right now. But it's backstory stuff. You can figure it out. Maybe during his research, he accidentally triggered some kind of long forgotten cursed object that inflicted the curse upon him. Something like that. But so he came up with this real quick idea of okay, he had to get rid of his silencing curse, and at the start of the game, it's already cured. He went to this temple that's far, like in some smaller village outside of the main city to get it removed because all of the temples inside the city couldn't really deal with it. Um, like the nature of it, whatever, for some reason that is yet to be determined, the city temples in the city couldn't deal with it, so they had to go to like healing clerics somewhere else. So we went to a nature temple outside somewhere. They healed it, and I gave him a little nugget to go into. They gave him a box to deliver to the temple of Mistra, the goddess of magic, that's in the city. Like, they must deal back and forth. That makes sense. And it's also, I was just wanted to give him something to do, some little plot thread to follow through instead of just, all right, you just go back to town and go to sleep. And also, if I can, it's also that was me setting up uh, both give him a thread to follow through and do something with, but also like I can use that to set up something by the time he gets to that temple. I'll have thought of something to do. And it turns out, the Temple of Mistra, their clerics of Mistra, the goddess of magic, are a lot more, they're closer to wizards than they are clerics. They're all about like magical research and that type of stuff. So he kind of fits in there even though he's not a follower of Mistra directly, he's just a regular wizard. But they got a lot in common, so it's like okay, it's good to tie him in there. He talks to them sometimes, like magical research is important, but also just giving him like a reason to go there. And later on, I thought of some stuff, but we'll get into that. So that was the setup for this game, for this character. He started rolling his stats, and man, are they trash. Um, he's got negative almost everything except for intelligence and charisma. The only thing, so something else I did, one of the reasons I wanted to get class first was we're rolling these stats like effectively in line also, like when a character has to make an ability check, we figure out their that ability right there. Like, okay, um, you see something in the distance, make a perception check. But first, let's see what your wisdom is because that's the stat you need to use. So then you find out your wisdom, you roll 46, drop the lowest. Um, and sometimes you get stat spreads like this. But because he's a wizard, his intelligence is the most important stat. I let him effectively roll with advantage here. So maybe I might do it a little differently, but in this case, I had him roll 46 twice, or 46 drop the lowest twice, and then pick whichever one is higher. Next time, I might let someone roll 8d6, drop the lowest 5, maybe, but that's pretty guaranteed to get an 18. But let's see. Let's see what we get. All right, so we got like a 6, a 4, a 4, some threes. Yeah, like so. Okay, that's still like a 14 intelligence. Like it's not that big a deal. Like the odds are you're still going to get a certain value. Um, so maybe I'll do that. We'll see, so that their stats can be a little bit higher. But that also ties into something that, in particular, when characters have like really low stats or something like this, I really like to either reward them for playing with these kinds of stats, and playing a character like this can be its own reward, but also kind of might want to bring the character up a little bit. So I gave a little later on, I gave this character an arcane grimoire, an uncommon magic item that just boosts their spell save DC. It doesn't do a whole lot else. It does let you, you can. That's a cool little feature, but not relevant right now. But just something to bring their otherwise low power level up a little bit. And you can do this. Something else, I also gave him a feat for free. I gave him Warcaster because his con is garbage. So let's give him something to help his concentration a little bit. And I'm also of the mindset I like to give feats out pretty liberally, for a lot of different things. But so let's go back through the game, through the session that through the session. So pretty much right away, I had him roll on this D100 table that I found for low level adventures, and it's a pretty good table. There's some weird results. It's not like a traveling encounter table. It's just a low level like adventure table basically, because not every like one of the results was like a bunch of Azer, which are like fire elemental dwarves, have taken over the blacksmith. It's like, well, he's currently out on the road. That doesn't make any sense to get that value, but not the point. You can adapt to these things. They're just inspiration anyway. Like any of these tables, like I'm gonna twist them and adapt them to whatever the current situation is. So he rolled first. Or he rolled, and I'm not gonna bring up the table because I have it on Messenger. But he rolled on the table, and his first result resulted in him running into a traveling chef that's just looking for exotic ingredients. So because of like the way he was traveling, and I didn't want him to be going the other way, I had it. He's coming up on this traveling chef that's pulling a like this little cart, like basically like a little luggage thing that he's just pulling down the road. So he's moving a little bit slower than a normal walking pace. But later on, when he saw that chef again, it unfolds into like a whole cart, like a whole street cart that he's like selling food out of. So, magic. But he's walking up to this chef, um, and I'm describing things like his perception's a little low, this character, and he's a little far away. I want to give him enough space to like really kind of give him some room to play. So at a distance, he just sees like a white humanoid figure. He can't really make out much detail, and he knows that because he's far away. But as he gets closer, he can make out some detail. I did some rolls on that same table, and I got Harengon, which, okay, he's a rabbit folk chef. He decides to catch up to this chef because at a normal walking pace he's going to catch up. Um, so he catches up, and this player tends to be a little, I guess I'll say belligerent. He's a little on the belligerent side. He kind of antagonizes more often than anything else. Um, so he had an interaction with this chef, nothing like turned hostile, but he's obviously not like friends with this guy. He didn't have any like exotic monster parts to turn over or anything. He learned that the chef has currently has a stock of like basilisk soup. I don't know what that is, but I just like picked a monster and made a soup out of it. I was like, all right, what are the implications of that? Well, basilisk petrify you, so the soup is going to have this like restraining property to your mouth when you eat it. It'll be a little weird. Um, so I played that in later, but a lot of my thought process is just come up with an idea, like just grab something, and then think about the implications of that thing as we go. Like, okay, he's a chef. Okay, he wants weird monster parts. Okay, he's probably has some food made with weird monster parts. Okay, pick a monster. And I could roll for this, but I just picked Basilisk. Partially because I have a Harengon Drake Warden Ranger that I haven't played in anything, just sitting around. And his backstory is that he's a cockatrice farmer. He's a rancher. So I was thinking cockatrice, basilisk. I just picked basilisk, and that was my thought process. Just connections this, and then think through some implications there. Like okay, so then um, he was going on. I had him roll another time. Yeah, I had him roll one more time on the table, and he got a result. I forget exactly what he got, what the number was. But he got something that resulted in I think it was, pretty sure it was 27. Now I gotta look. Yeah. Okay. One troll that is very hungry. It speaks common and demands food from the party. If they give the troll food, it leaves them alone. Okay. So I narrated a troll sitting at like a little fork in the road, or another road goes over a bridge and meets the main road that he's on. So tie in trolls to bridges a little bit, just little flavor, little description. And this troll is kind of sitting on the road. He's got a little bonfire, and he's just has a bunch of bones that he's just sticking in the bonfire and trying to cook, and he's trying to eat them and get the marrow. And he doesn't have a lot, but he's just trying his best to get some kind of food out of this. Um, so he can't sneak around this troll. He doesn't manage to. Um, so he talks to him, and the troll asks if he has food. And I'm role playing this troll as pretty dim-witted, blinking one eye at a time. But he convinces the troll. He rolls persuasion, and he gets a pretty good. First, we find his charisma. It's pretty good, and he decides he's proficient. Oh, I think he changed that accidentally. Um, but yeah, like kind of like as we're going, it's like okay, roll persuasion, and are you proficient in it? So moving around, thinking things through, but maybe he's not now. These things float. Um, but he persuades the troll that there's a Harengon coming down the road. He has food. And this belligerent player was trying to get the troll to eat the Harengon, presumably. Um, but of course, I know what I had to do right there. The traveling street chef gets a troll as an assistant. It's easy because one, the Harengon has plenty of food in the cart on him. He can give the troll some food. They can befriend each other. And that Harengon was pretty likable. Like like there was no reason to be belligerent, but the player just kind of was. So the troll and the Harengon they become partners, associates, whatever. But he won't find that out till they get to the town. So then I don't have them roll again, And now I institute this NPC that I've just been using that I blatantly stole from another DM friend of mine that runs my Monday Night Curse of Strahd game. Rickety is a super powerful old wizard that like is also kind of a merchant. He sells and deals in magic items. That DM puts Rickety in all of his games somewhere. He's like dimensional, hopping, multi multi universal, whatever. So let's just have Rickety. He's a belligerent. He's another belligerent old man. Wears a burlap sack for clothes, even though he's a very powerful wizard. So he comes up, and the other character, Victor, ran into Rickety as well. He Victor was very he was a lot polite, a lot more polite in his interactions with Rickety. And there was a trap or a test that the donkey next to this wizard's like magic item stall that's sitting on the side of the road for no reason um, was kind of like the donkey's sitting there and it's got like a little chest that it would be relatively easy to steal, but it's obviously magically trapped if you're, paying attention to stuff. But Victor decides not to take it, and I think he actually like um or maybe it was like a little pouch or something with gold in it, and Victor actually like closes it and like ties it up to the donkey, like fixes the bow. It was something like that. And then immediately after that, Rickety's like, "Good job, you passed the test. You're not a dickhead. I'll give you something." So I give him an uncommon magic item. He takes a cloak of elven kind, because rogues. But just a simple way to like reward that now. And it's not that I made up my mind to have Rickety give Victor a magic item, but it's just like that was a strong possibility, and there were a lot of ways that that could go. Unless Victor was just outright didn't want to interact and just left. Then it's like, all right, whatever. But Cillianor, our orc wizard, his experience was much different. Um, he found the stall unattended, or no, it wasn't unattended. Rickety was sleeping inside, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to like look around the camp, find that same bag, and do the same thing. But instead, he just kept knocking on the door to wake Rickety up because Cillianor only wanted a place to sleep. Like, all right, so made a made a persuasion check. I don't think he did very well in the check, but he was like pathetic enough as a wizard to just Rickety let him stay. There was a little interaction, and then when he wakes up, there's chests all over the room that have these magic items in them. So he's like, all right, well, Rickety's not here. I'm going to try to steal something. So he tries to open the chest, and it's a mimic. It's not a hostile mimic, it's just a mimic. Rickety uses a bunch of mimics to house magic items. So he gets stuck to it. He pulls away. He understands what mimics are, and then Rickety's right behind him. Rickety insults him, which is another callback to that campaign. There was a wizard PC that Rickety just kept calling a shit wizard. It was great. So calling this orc now a shit wizard because you gotta. So and because I have Rickety asks like, "You're a wizard, right? All right, let me see your spell book." And Selenor pulls out like essentially like a single parchment. It's not even a book. So he's like, and this is so pathetic to Rickety. He's like, "All right, hold on," and he like basically gives him this arcane grimoire, puts his spells in it for free, and then gives him a custom spell that does something that I haven't fully decided yet, but it's also too powerful for him to cast anyway. It's like a second or I think I'm gonna make it a second level spell, so he'll get it soon. And maybe this book will have more Rickety spells in it later. I don't know. But point is, Rickety put a custom spell in there for this guy to work towards. Um, then basically kicks him out of the tent or out of the stall. When Cillianor turns around, the stall's gone because thematic. So now I decide there's been enough development with just Cillianor. I want to bring Victor back in and let that other player play as well. And that's the thing. We had played for like almost an hour at this point, and we got through all those things. But the other player was just kind of sitting around watching. And that's kind of a problem, isn't it? So I like to avoid that as much as I can, but the other Victor's player was okay with it. He was having fun just watching. So I wanted to give that a little bit of time to go, but typically you do want to avoid that as much as possible. You want to get the players into the game. But special case, I wanted to give Cillianor enough time to kind of gestate as we went. Um, so what I ended up doing, Victor was like, it was around this area that Victor was camped out overnight. Um, so I had Cillianor pretty much approaching to where Victor was. He rolled a really good perception check, found some wolf tracks, and as Cillianor is like coming up on where Victor's little camp is, Victor's still asleep because he was up pretty late, fulfilling his little assassin contract. The wolves attack Victor pretty much in his sleep, but so initiative starts. I think, or no, I allowed Cillianor to have a surprise round at at a long range. Cast magic missile, takes out one wolf, one of the two wolves, really easily. Or when I say easily, he did exactly enough damage to kill it in one shot with all three darts from the missile. So then initiatives rolled, um, and I allowed Cillianor to, or I allowed the wizard's player to dictate, like, okay, you kill the wolf. Which way does it fly? And he chose that the wolf just flies back. Okay, that means the wolf's corpse falls down on Victor, pinning him to the ground. Okay, initiative time. The remaining wolf rolls highest, so he goes first. Victor is right in front of him and is prone, so the wolf gets advantage. He rolls almost max damage. Um, Victor is left with 2 HP. They were level 1 at this point as well. So Victor has 2 HP left and is on the ground. So it's like, all right, because like the wolf is restricting his movement. I'm like considering it a grappled condition, but it's not exactly the same. So like, all right, you can spend your bonus action to try to make a strength check to get out of this. And a bonus action isn't the same thing as an action in that like you always can use it for something. It's always contextual. And this I felt like was a contextual enough reason to be able to use a bonus action for it. Like it's not the same difficulty as getting a creature that's trying to hold on to you. It's not exactly the same. And I was probably going to take all his movement, even if he succeeded, but he rolls a nat 20 because, of course. So it's like, okay, you get out, you have half your movement left. There's an angry wolf in front of you that just bit you and took out almost all your life. Um, so he moves backwards, or he makes an attack on the wolf, does some damage, then moves backwards. And because of the terrain, he's like the he's a human. He's able to like swing over the wolf with his sword, and he doesn't have disadvantage on his attack. It's not obstructing him. But he moves away from the wolf, and this corpse is in between them, interposed between them, so that wolf instead has disadvantage to attack Victor and misses. Probably a good thing. Would have taken him down, but I mean, taking him down to 0 HP isn't that bad of a thing. Like, especially because Cillianor got like a pre-combat shot in and killed the one wolf. There was no way they were going to lose this encounter. But I wanted to play it like that's just the choices I made in the combat. So he moves away, and then Cillianor's turn comes up, does Ray of Frost, kills the second wolf. Okay, cool. Combat's over. You survive the wolves. You get experience. And then they start talking back and forth, and the two characters start to get to know each other. And through this little combat, one of the characters is kind of indebted to the other. That's a decent way to get them to join up. And, there's always going to be a little metagaming here that, like, okay, you're both If something's not playing in my headphones, they time out and turn off. So there's metagaming involved. You both know you're players at the campaign in this at this table, so you're gonna want to travel together and party together, and that's fine. But you know, um, it did enough. So it's like, okay, they take a little short rest, they skin the wolves, and they start asking some questions. Like, all right, like earlier, the the wizard wanted to try to like sneak into the wheat into the fields to get around the troll. I was like, all right, well, it's late, it's at night, and also this far like you're kind of farther out from the city. There's not a lot of guard patrols and stuff like that out on the roads here. So now there can occasionally be predators and dangerous things that live in the tall grass in the fields. So it's like, okay, probably want to avoid that. And that was a case of me. I just wanted to nudge the player towards interacting with the troll because trying to signal to the player like, no, you don't want to go that way, the troll is not that bad of an option because the troll wasn't that dangerous. It wasn't going to eat him. Just try to give them a reason to like, okay, no, okay, I'll go talk to the troll without telling them like, no, you're going to be fine. So, um, based on that information, they're like, okay, this predator's out in the troll. Is there any kind of bounty for taking dangerous animals out that get too close to the city? Like, okay, yeah, there is. So they skin the wolves. They don't do a great job, but it's not really the point. It's just proof they killed wolves. Um, Maybe not the best, but figure out details later. The not super worried about conservation, wildlife conservation. Why are there always more wolves? Ah, magic. So they do that. They take a little short rest. Victor recovers. He rolls max on his hit die, so he's back to full. Good job. Good stuff. And I have them roll pretty much one more time on that random table, and they get a really funny result. Um, they get um, the result. They get on the road. There's an oni and a hag arguing over which one of them is prettier, and they ask the party to settle their argument, which is just really fucked up. So I have this Oni and this hag, and I narrate that as they approach, like, they travel these roads, there's a crossroads coming up ahead. And as they approach, they feel this heaviness in the air, and there's like a magical quality to this. And as they get a little closer, they start to feel like two competing wells of magical energy. So they know they're kind of like, I describe it like a whirlpool pulling them in. So whatever it is, they gotta deal with it in some way. It's going to be difficult to go around because like it's pulling them in, so it's more difficult to go around. Um, so they get up there and they overhear this Oni and Hag arguing, and they get roped in. They get roped into this argument, and the Oni and Hag are making their case like, no, I come up with something that each one says about the other. And they're talking back and forth, and I don't want to make it obvious that they just have to pick one. Like they'll get the favor of one and the disdain of the other. Meaning, as far as I'm concerned, like, okay, this will be they can be like on good terms with one of them. Maybe they'll get a boon right now. Maybe they can ask for a favor later, or like that entity will just look at them favorably. And then the other one I can maybe use as a villain later or something if I'm playing this for that long. But it's just setting something up to use maybe later. And if this hag never shows up again, I forget about it. I don't know. Just setting stuff up to use for later. So they try to finagle their way out of it a little bit, and both the Oni and the hag make it clear you gotta decide which one of us is better looking. They try to go like, oh, I like the Oni. Well, I like the hag. And that's what we think. We're torn on it. It's like, nope, good enough. Not good enough. Audience has to be unanimous. They're like, okay. They pick the Oni. I narrate the hag doing some creepy shit, all the shadows go deeper, and she like goes ethereal and like drags her hands through their face as she leaves. So just like a vaguely threatening thing, and she disappears. Like, oh, okay, that's probably not good. But then the Oni thanks them, um, wishes them a blessed day, and gives them each a coin that has Oni faces on it. Like one side is a blue Oni, the other side is a red Oni. Like, all right. They check out the coins out later, and there's like some magic at it, basically. And they ask another person later on, but I'll go into that later. So that is like the last time I have them roll on this random table. And something I really like about random tables, especially later, is you can kind of offload some creativity and decision making. Because sometimes you're trying to decide, okay, what happens next? What's on the road? What happens next in town? I don't know. Like, and there's tons of things that would be fine, but you, as a DM, are having a hard time deciding. So just grab a table from somewhere, make your own. And this is a great way to like this is a great form of prep that I find because random tables can always be reused. Like you edit something out or you note that this party already encountered this result, so if they roll that again, skip it and have them roll again or something. Um, but it just lets you I really like the idea of offloading and offsetting some creativity or borrowing creativity from another time. Like, on a Sunday morning, if I when I'm having coffee, I might feel a little creative and I can make a little table real quick. I don't know for what. Maybe I'll make it for like, desert traveling or something. I don't know. Or just for in this city that they're going to be in. Write some things down, write some possibilities, some little encounters instead of having to like really carefully curate because if you're choosing like, okay, at the square there's going to be these things, and then over here there's going to be this, eh, like that require and like that has this element of like, is this the optimal choice for right here in this or in their adventure, and is this going to be exactly the best thing for them to encounter? Nah, just write shit down, put it on a table, let the players roll on it, because then it feels like they had some hand in it as well, because that's what they rolled, that's what they got. And it lets you avoid making as many decisions in the middle of the game, um, because there's something very like decision fatigue. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, whoever you are, listener. um, but this term I always really like. There's only so many decisions you can make, like in an hour, in a day, before you start to get really tired of making decisions and you run out of good brain juice. You're just done. So that's a really good way to avoid that and make it so if you're using tables, I feel like the game is running itself a lot more, and that really helps. So, and the other thing about the hag and the oni, like, yeah, those two things were like completely insurmountable creatures. There is no way the party could have dealt with them in an encounter. But it's not a fight, and there's no reason for the players to make it a fight. But if they do, they're dead, and that's on them. But there would be a lot of reasons for them to not fight. And that requires some player buy-in there, where it's like, okay, I respect the world enough that I'm not just going to like poke this thing that will kill me. Like I'm not going to just do that. But that requires some player buy-in. So after that, they're traveling on the road. They're going to get to the city pretty soon. So they encounter a guard patrol, and they discuss some things back and forth. They ask like, what are some current events? So it's like, all right, I think for a second, like, and this is an example of the type of decision you have to make. It like just make up something creative, and that can relate to um, decision fatigue. I could have rolled on that D100 table, and then whatever I got relates to some current events in the city. Like if I got like, the party, like one result is like some drunk satyrs wait in ambush on the road. Like okay, I have to adapt that idea to city news. Like okay, a party of satyrs came through the city yesterday and they made a mess of a variety of taverns on this epic pub crawl they were on. Like, all right, that's current events, that's interesting news, and they can maybe go and interact with that in some way. I don't know how they'd interact with it, but somehow. But instead, I just come up with, oh, there's the next week is the Violet Ball, the like a big yearly uh, gala held by all the nobles, and the guards don't like it because they have to work that without getting any extra guard shifts, and like there's a lot of extra work to do during that time, so they don't like it, but they get bribed during it sometimes and just come up with some shit to say like how this guard feels about it. Like, oh, sometimes I get paid so that a noble can sneak off with someone he shouldn't be into a back room for a little bit, and I get paid to look the other way and not remember it. You know, something like that. It's just little something that brings, like, kind of deepens the world a little bit, makes it feel a little more alive. But that can be difficult to come up with sometimes. But that's also something I really enjoy doing. Part of DMing that I really like. Um, and I feel like I got a lot of experience from running Site 27, and because that game is very, very on the rails. There's a very clear path forward for the players, and that's important. But I'll get into that. So during this conversation with these guards, I made it a point to like prompt the individual players, give them room to talk and ask questions, and try to make it snappy. Like, keep the pace up so it doesn't just get bogged down and they're standing there. Which is really difficult, and I don't really have an answer for how to do that. Just, it's something you just have to try to figure out how to do. And, you know, I feel like you get a better handle on it through experience. But then they get into the city, and I only really describe it as far as they can see or as far as they can interact with. Like, they come through the city, and this is a very trade-oriented section, so they get through like a little trade corner, and they see that Harangon chef now with a troll employee cooking. His cart is swamped. It is cook. It is booked. It is popping. Whatever other adjectives and verbs you want to use. Um, so the the orc wizard, he kind of puts up his hood and he sneaks by, and there's no reason he's not able to. Whereas Victor, he actually goes through and he orders some food, and he gets some food for Cillianor as well, so that's nice. But Cillianor then, he goes over to the Temple of Mistra to deliver the package. I narrate some clerics doing research and like reading spell books and doing some experiments and stuff, and there's a gnome clerk at the front that Cillianor talks to, and I give him a ridiculous gnome name like Boba Burbert or something nonsensical. I just put a bunch of vowels and adjectives together, or not adjectives, just put a bunch of vowels together. So, and then he summons the an intern Jeremy who's like effectively a wild magic sorcerer, and they all like everybody has counterspell ready for whenever he triggers a magic surge. So like, no, no magic, stop it, you can blow shit up. But he gets shown over to the head priest, who's a dwarf wizard doing some research. He hands him this delivery from the Temple of Sylvanos that Cillianor went to get his silencing curse taken care of. And the player makes some remarks like, "Oh no, I can talk now. You know, they did a good job." So it's like, okay, that's fun. A nice little callback. The player's like working that angle back in and making it relevant instead of just, "Hey, here's the thing." So they're talking back and forth, and this delivery was actually a big box of spell components that the head priestess asked for. And I made almost every NPC male just because it was easier. It's just easier for me to do. The only one that wasn't was the hag. But obviously, I should make some more female NPCs. But just something I noted, like a little kind of mistake that I was doing, like, I'm making a lot of dudes. Um, but so Selianor interacts with this wizard high priest of Mistra of magic. They have a little back and forth. Cillianor asks him about all of his different magical items that he's gotten, like the the Oni coin, the grimoire he got, the and the Oni actually gave them horns. His horns, he broke them off and gave them two horns. It's like, I guess Onis grow horns really fast in my world. I don't know why, but it's a useful spell component somehow. Um, so, and then he sells that horn to the wizard. He gives him some money, and then the wizard, out of the kindness of his heart, like, I like you. You're doing good. Thanks for showing me all that. And he gives him a set of a magic quill that stretches ink farther than it should. So it just reduces um, spell copying costs by like 50% or something. Just a fun little magic item that helps with some stuff, but it's fun to have those types of items. Things like alchemy jugs and boots of the hinterlands that don't have like super direct combat applications. The boots of the hinterlands do because they give you cold resistance, but like they give you like more narrative stuff to do, and those are always fun. Players really like to get those. So, but cutting back to Victor, he's getting food. He interacts with the Harangon a little bit, and he's like, super busy. Like, what do you want? Special? All right, here you go. um, and he actually steals a little bit. He pickpockets somebody else, and he got a bag with a few platinum in it. I forget how much, and weird metal, just like a common magic item that he hasn't actually identified yet. But it's some kind of metal that has like a one-time use effect. It's one of those types of magic items. So then he meets up with Cillianor. He gives Cillianor the food. They talk about the food a little bit. The basilisk soup. It has that petrifying effect on your mouth. It's really silly. So then they go to Cillianor's shack that is in the town somewhere. It's obviously pretty run down. Cillianor doesn't have a lot of money. So they do that. He puts his food in like the ice box that he keeps cold with Ray of Frost. They talk a little bit, and then they have a little bit more to do. So they split off again. Um, they talk about there's like a brothel nearby that I named something awful like the Snail's Trail, something like that. And you got to lean into that stuff sometimes. Like it's a brothel, name it something awful because it's like a rundown section of town. It's the brothel there. Name it something awful that makes everybody facepalm. It's always fun. Um, so they split off again. Victor goes to see his contact in town. Um, it's the same contact. I gave him a contact in town that he can borrow money from if he needs to, and it's also who he brokers jobs with. So he turns in a signet ring that he stole from his target that he killed last session, gets the reward, and chats with a little bit. And this is another spot I can flesh out the world a little more. He's this lizard folk that runs a construction business, um, or he's a construction manager. He manages construction projects for other people. But he also manages assassin contracts as well. So he's got his fingers in a lot of things. So I just make this lizard folk. He's like kind of what are they called? Those lizards that a frilled lizard, because they have a really basic ass name. They've got the frill that's like pops out and they run on their hind legs through the desert. He's got all these vibrant colors all over him. But he's this lizard folk that Victor's known for a while, so just add another character. Use my standard lizard folk voice. They always talk like this on the lower side and lots of S's that get stressed. Try not to overdo it because otherwise it gets really annoying. But so he deals with that. He might get another contract tomorrow, so he's going to be in town for a little bit. So that's the end of Victor's little interaction. And what did Cillianor do? He did something. I can't remember what the hell he did. Mm. Yeah, I really don't. I don't remember what he did after that. He had to have done something. I'm blanking. I don't remember at all what Cillianor did at the end of that session. Do they have any notes? No, nah, no notes. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he did. Yeah, I don't know. He was doing. He did all. I remember he did something. I think he joked about going to the snail's trail. He went somewhere. Oh, he went to the Hunters Guild, which I named the Inked Harvest. Just some flavorful name. And I tried to make like a fun, like some kind of cool name, because I didn't want it to just be the Hunters Guild or something, because this was going to be something that was going to get reused later. So I tried to put a little effort into the naming. So he went there, he had some interactions, sold the wolf pelts, met the Aarakocra clerk there that deals with it. Apparently, like he made a joke because that player he's a gay guy, so his characters are always making jokes related to that. So he made that kind of joke, which I won't repeat because it's not uh, YouTube friendly, I guess. But he made a certain joke, and then I decided in that moment, okay, no, the Aarakocra's gay, and he has a husband, and he's a rooster Aarakocra, the husband. I'm like, no thanks, I already got one of whatever you just offered me, and he points to that. But then after that, they met up at Jim's Lunch, a tavern, um, and that was pretty much the end of the session. But let me look at some of my notes here. So I only narrated the city like as far as they could see and interact with, while giving what I like to call or think of as like life-giving details. It's stuff like, okay, this Aarakocra has a husband that's a rooster Aarakocra. Like that just fleshes out the world a little bit and makes it feel a little more alive. It's not a super important detail, and it's not gonna like really affect the plot in any way, but it makes the world feel a little better. Um, and then also the party kept separating and then getting back and then coming back together, and that can be difficult to manage too. You got to move quick, um, especially if something is taking a really long time. Then in the middle of one player of one side doing something, you got to jump back to the other players to keep them engaged. Like you don't. I find you generally don't want stretches where players aren't doing anything to be more than like 10, 15 minutes max. And that's only if you absolutely have to. That's one of the reasons not to split the party, because you want them to all be able to interact with the world and do stuff. So when they're separated, you got to keep things moving and keep the path for the players pretty obvious. But then, like at the end of this session, the players are pretty much out of objectives, so they're going to meet at Jim's lunch next session. So maybe there's got to be something there for them to interact with to set them on some kind of course. And if we play this game again, and especially if I have another player join, we'll go through the process of making a new character again. But might be able to tie something in there. But that's something I'll come up with then and worry about at that point. Again, maybe I'll roll on a random table to get a little inspiration, but or maybe, I'll start a scene in the tavern and then the players will do something and then that will give me inspiration and I can play off of that. Like maybe they'll start a fight and they have like a little brawl in the tavern, and then whoever they have a fight with is like, "Man, that was a lot of fun. You guys should join me down at the fighting pits." So then they go to the fighting pits, or they have a reason to go there. That kind of stuff. It's just like always try to like give the player something to bite on, some kind of hook, something. Even if it's just a hook that's only gonna give them something to do for like the next 10 minutes. Like giving them something like that really cuts down on like me going, okay, so you guys walk down the road and you keep going and nothing happens and you're continuing to walk. Stuff like that. But that's tricky. It's really difficult. And you want to give I like to try to give the players enough room to talk to each other as well. And they don't always take it, and then you get a little dead air sometimes. But that's just kind of how it is. You give the players room, and if they don't take it, then you move on. Um, but yeah, that was pretty much going over that entire session. This is an hour-long video. Um, what else? Yeah, but like I said, for this character Cillianor, because his stats are so low, I gave him a feat, I gave him a cool item, gave him some stuff. Um, and the way 5e is designed, it's characters aren't like absolutely awful. This is probably the worst wizard I've ever seen, but he's functional. He can throw spells at a guy, at targets. His spell save DC is okay, especially now with the Arcane Grimoire. But he'll be able to improve his intelligence later on, and blah blah blah. And yeah, as long as like he gets his intelligence to like a 16 and then an 18 later on, it's fine. He'll be functional. He's not the strongest wizard ever, but he's okay. Like it'll work. Like a fighter that's got like, a 14 con and a 16 strength and a 12 dex, like that fighter will function in the system. Like it's okay because of the way like bounded accuracy kind of like helps a lot there. But also like you can give them items to shore them up. You can throw particular monsters at them. And I tend to tailor all of my monsters to my party anyway. Like I take into account their HP, the party's average ACs, their most defensive player or their most protected highest AC character. Take those into account and really just try to take those things into account when I build an encounter real quick. And a lot of time when I'm running on a monster, I don't even have a stat block. I just like, okay, it's got like a +6 to attack. He's got like 30 HP, whatever it is. Or sometimes, depending on what I want from the party, like if I want a monster that they can just kill, I'll give it like 20 HP. And a player could probably hit that benchmark of damage, like in a certain game they can hit that benchmark, do that much damage without spending resources. And spending resources will just let them kill like two monsters in a turn instead of just one. Or sometimes other monsters they can't kill in one turn without spending resources. And that's like how I kind of go about it and judge it. So, yeah, or they can't avoid damage without spending resources, which taking damage it's in and of itself is spending resources because your HP is a resource. So that's just not a quick, but a summary and overview of that total improv session that I ran last night. Um, some of my thought processes and what I was going for and my goals during the session at different times, and some general philosophies that I tend to do. So yeah, I'm gonna upload this pretty much right away so someone can watch it.